Well, thank you. I hope you're excited for some XML. Um, so let's get started. My name is Anita Singh. I work at Blinkist. And today we are going to learn about the basics of styling and material theming so that we can have the full big picture of how to style our apps most effectively in 2019. So without further ado, let's get started. Why are we even talking about styles? Is there a problem? When it comes to styling on Android, you have a lot of choice, but this can also lead to some confusion. For example, you may use a style, a theme, a text appearance, a theme overlay, a default style, which is something that might be applied even if you don't do anything. Material theming, when I first learned of this, I was kind of confused. Is this the same thing as Material Design 2, Material Component? Does it have anything to do with the regular Android theme? And the fact that makes it all the more confusing is that they all use the style tag. So you have something called a theme and a style, but a theme is a style. And that's confusing. And the truth is, yes, they are all styles. However, they differ in what they're applied to, how they're applied, and the attributes that they support. And we're going to learn about this in detail for all of the styling techniques listed here, starting with the style. Surprise. It is the basic building blocks of styling on Android. It is a key value store, where the key is called an attribute, and the value is what we provide in the style. And it specifies the look of a single view. So if you apply a style to a view group, it's going to apply that style only to the view group and not to the child views. And it's important to know this because there are other styling techniques like themes that also apply to the child views. So let's take a look at an example. Here is a good old style, and it inherits from another style. So styles can inherit from each other. And Android:text color and Android:font family, they are the attributes, so they're the keys to this key value store. And then the values are color white and Serapro bold, which is what we're providing in this style. And then we can apply this style using the style attribute on pretty much any view or anything that extends a view, like a view group. So when should you use styles? When I first learned about styles, I thought it was a way to clean up layout XML and have it look neat and put all your styling in one place. So I actually extracted out styles from every single view. Don't do that. That does not scale well. You only want to extract styles if it's used in more than one place and in more than one logically related component. And I say logically related component because you might have a card view, you might have a dialog, and they have some of the same values for some attributes. And if you apply the same style to both of them, in the future, if you want to update the look of the card view, it's also going to update the view for the dialog. And unless that is exactly what you want, don't use the same style on components that are very different. You don't want unintended side effects. So it's perfectly OK to have multiple styles that have the same values for attributes, but they're being applied to different logically related components. All right, so this wraps up the style. Let's now learn about another styling technique called the text appearance. And this can be applied to a text view or any class that extends a text view, like buttons, edit text, etc. And it is essentially text-specific styling And it works at the character level, so it does not care about paragraph level attributes, such as max lines, break strategy, line height, etc. It does not care about paragraph level attributes. And I know I have definitely put max lines in a text appearance before and been like, oh my god, why is this not working? Well, now we know. So let's take a look at an example of a text appearance. Again, it's a good old style, but it has attributes styling text at the character level, like Android text color and Android font family. And you can apply the text appearance with this Android text appearance attribute, again, on any text view or any view that extends a text view, like an edit text. So when should you use a text appearance? If you have a style that has text-related attributes and non-text-related attributes, it's generally a good idea to extract the character-level attributes into a text appearance, because when you see Android text appearance being set on a text view, you know exactly what it's doing. And also, text appearance is the only dynamic style. So you can do textView.setTextAppearance anytime after inflation. Whereas if there's no such thing as .setStyle. You have to supply those at inflation time. So in the future, you can use this text appearance programmatically as well. And if you are only styling text at the character level anyway, then you might as well use the text appearance right away. So this wraps up styling that applies to a single view. Let's now move on to another styling technique called a theme that can apply to all the child views as well. So it's essentially a type of style that you can apply to an app, activity, or a view hierarchy, but we're going to focus more on app and activity level theming, because we have another section covering view and view hierarchy theming more in detail. And typically, you apply this style in the Android manifest file. And when you do that, this context.setTheme method is called for you under the hood before the activity.onCreate. Because again, themes are not a dynamic style. They need to be set before inflation. So if you want to do it programmatically, make sure you always call it before the onCreate. And this is actually a terribly named method. It actually does not replace the theme. It applies the theme on top of what's already there. And that's something to be conscious of. All right, so let's take a look at an example of a theme. And if you have any UI in your app, you've probably seen your app theme, hopefully. And it contains attributes like color primary, color secondary, etc. And these are theme level attributes. So if you were to use this in a style or a text appearance, it's not going to do anything. And again, I know when I started, I definitely tried this and was frustrated about why it wasn't working. And something cool that you can do in themes is that you can set default style attributes. So here I'm saying, hey, by default, I want all the card views in my app to have this round card view style. And that's why this card view style is known as a default style attribute. And the style that it's pointing to, the round card view style, is called a default style. So essentially, anything that you want to apply app-wide, you ideally want to put it in your theme. And you can apply a theme using this Android:theme attribute on an application, activity, view, or view hierarchy. And a very powerful feature that comes with theming is that you can pretty much use theme attributes almost everywhere. Color state lists, drawables, styles. And in this case, I'm using it in a color state list. and I'm saying, all right, when enabled, I want you to be color secondary. When disabled, I still want you to be color secondary, but with alpha 0.6. And I'm able to reference these theme attributes by using this !* syntax, which looks up the theme attribute in the current context. And this could be defined in your app theme, your activity theme, in the view hierarchy. This will look up the correct color secondary for you. And what this means is that you don't have to hard code a lot of the colors in your app. You can just reference the ones in the theme. But why is this even helpful? Well, this is so that the next time you go through a rebranding, you can just update your new colors, text appearances, widget styles, etc. in one place, and it will propagate throughout your app. You don't have to go into every single view and change things, and that's really powerful. Also, if you ever want to support dark mode, usually you supply a theme that it uses for when night mode is set, and if you were just using theme attributes in your app, then things will just automatically work. But if you weren't, you're going to have a tough time. So as much as possible, avoid hard coding colors or anything that's already in your theme. Reference them whenever you can. All right, so when should you use a theme? If you want a certain style to apply to all of the child views, then you should think, aha, this seems like a good use of a theme. And if you want to implement a robust design system, theming can be a very powerful tool. You can enforce your brand colors, widget design, text appearances through a single place in your app so that you don't end up with 10 different kind of greens that look almost the same or 10 different kind of grays that don't have any meaningful differences. We actually had this in our app, and it's because we didn't use theming properly. So don't be like us. All right, so this kind of wraps up activity and app level theming. Let's now move on to view level theming. That can also be known as a theme overlay, and it's nothing but a theme. Lollipop introduced view level theming, and it's backported to API 14 with the help of Android X. And when you do Android:theme on a view or view hierarchy, it uses context theme wrapper under the hood. So what context theme wrapper does is it takes in a theme ID and applies that theme on top of the base context theme. So the attributes that you provided in this theme will override the attributes on the base context theme, and the rest of the attributes will remain untouched. They will retain their original values. And this is how the theme is being overlaid on the base context theme, and therefore it's known as a theme overlay. So let's take a look at an example. You can use the Android:theme attribute to apply the theme overlay. Again, it's really nothing but a theme, except that it only contains a subset of values that need to be applied on top of the context theme. In this case, I only want to override the color primary of this button. That's it. And here, I'm only providing that color primary. I'm not inheriting from the activity theme. I'm not inheriting from the app theme. It's not necessary. So theme overlays are basically kind of an optimization and can be really helpful when it comes to view level and view hierarchy level theming. All right, so when should you use a theme overlay? If you want things to look exactly the same and you want to just override a couple of things, theme overlay is your friend. But also, if you want to invert the theme for a view or view hierarchy, then you can use a theme overlay for this as well. Maybe you have a light-themed activity and you want a dark-themed toolbar. So dark background, light text. You can just set theme overlay.dark.actionBar, which is a theme overlay provided by the framework, on the toolbar, and that's it. You don't have to touch the rest of your activity. And maybe you have a single activity architecture. And if you apply a theme on the activity, your entire app is going to have that theme. But maybe you want some fragments to be light themed and some to be dark themed. Or you want to invert certain sections of a screen. You can use theme overlays to do that as well by inheriting from one of the platform theme overlays that are provided to you. All right, so this wraps up 4 main styling techniques in Android. But what is the order of precedence? If I say text color equal to blue in a text appearance and text color equal to green in a style, which one's going to win? How many of you think the text appearance is going to win? Well, I actually can't see anything. And let me try this again. How many of you think that the style will win? Okay, it seemed kind of equal. The style is going to win. And let's learn why. So let's remind ourselves first of what a default style attribute is. Over here, I'm saying by default, I want all the card views in my app to have this round card view style. And the card view style is known as a default style attribute because that's what's determining what card views are going to look like by default. So what happens next? To understand this, let's look into the card view class. And the card view class has many constructors. And here we're looking at 2 of them, where the first one calls the second one. And if you notice, in the first constructor, the last parameter is the default style attribute that we just set. So r.attra.cardViewStyle. And this is passed into kind of the main constructor, into this method that's called context.obtainStyledAttributes. And this context.obtainStyleAttributes calls getTheme.obtainStyleAttributes. And this is essentially where all the magic happens. That is surprisingly well documented by Google. So the first parameter is the view level attributes. The second one is the attributes that it supports. And the last 2 have to do with the default style. So the default style attribute, which in our case is r.attra.cardViewStyle, and the default style res, which is the round card view style. And this method uses this styling hierarchy to figure out which one wins, where everything on top overrides everything at the bottom. So it first applies the attributes from the text appearance, then the theme, then the default style, and the view, which means that everything in the view overrides everything in the style, overrides the default style, overrides the theme, wins over the text appearance. So that's why, in the example I gave you, text color equal to blue in the text appearance and text color equal to green in the style wins because it's above the text appearance in this hierarchy. And if you're not conscious of the style hierarchy, it can be pretty frustrating to work with styles because maybe the default style overrides your theme overlay or text appearance, and the default style was set by the parent theme, so app compat or material components, and it's something you may have never set yourself, right? But it's overriding what you set, so it can be quite confusing. But hopefully, knowing that there is this styling hierarchy can help us debug it better going forward. All right, so we know about the main styling techniques, and we know the styling hierarchy as well. I think we're ready to migrate to the newest, greatest theme, the material component theme. And this leads us to our next topic, which is material theming. What is it? It is the ability to customize material design to better reflect your product's brand through 3 theming subsystems: color, typography, and shape. And as you can see here, it's just a button, but it can look so different based on color, typography, and shape. And this can make your app look unique. And in order to use material theming, you want to be using the Material Components library, which is an evolution of the design support library. So all future updates now go to the Material Component library. They don't go to the design support library anymore. So you want to migrate to Material Components as soon as possible. If you migrate to Android X, this should have taken care of it. And this library also contains like new widgets, like the bottom app bar and new attributes. So it's quite exciting. And in order to take full potential of Material Components, you want to use the Material Component theme. And just as you have theme.materialComponents, you can have theme.appcompat.whatever. And the Material Component theme is built on top of AppCompat, where AppCompat is one of the dependencies of the Material Component library. All right, we're taking a pause. It's just my silky hair. Yeah. Wait, could you hear me this whole time? Okay. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Gonna have some water. Yep. Where was I? All right. So the Material Component theme is built on top of apps. So what this means is that when you migrate to the Material Component theme, you don't have to Command F and like erase AppCompat everywhere. AppCompat widget styles can work together with Material Components. In fact, there are AppCompat styles that don't have an equivalent in the Material Component world, so it's perfectly fine to use AppCompat styles along with Material Component styles. And there are shiny new attributes. We're going to learn about them. And it is min SDK14 and compile SDK 28+. Hopefully not a blocker for anyone. And the first theming subsystem that we want to talk about is color theming, which if you open the material design guidelines, you'll probably see something like this. You see primary, secondary, backgrounds, etc. But what do they mean? To understand that, let's take a look at an activity that is styled by the base Material Component theme. So nothing is customized here. And we're going to go over the attributes one by one. So one of the new attributes is the color primary variant, which is similar to the color primary dark on the previous theme. And then you have color primary, which is the main brand color for your product. Then you have background, which is the color of the background of scrollable content on Android. Then you have a new attribute called surface, which is the color of the backgrounds of Material Components, such as cards, sheets, menus. So as in this case, it is the color of this material card view. And then there's another new attribute known as colorOnPrimary, which is the color of content that goes on top of primary colors. And this is a really cool way that you can enforce accessibility in your app. You can make sure that whatever text or icons are displayed on primary is readable and has enough contrast. So no more inflating a dialog where the background's white, the text is white, and you can't see anything. You have more control now, so hopefully that will happen less. Then you have colorOnSurface, which is the color of content that goes on surface backgrounds. And then you have color secondary, which is kind of like color accent, your secondary branding color of your app. And then, last but not the least, There's color on secondary, which is the color of the content going on the color secondary backgrounds. And you can see that we now have so much more control over color theming in our app. And this directly maps into attributes that you can use directly, which is awesome. So this wraps up color theming. Let's now talk about our second theming subsystem known as shape theming. So a lot of the components in our app that are themable now have the material shape drawable as their background shape drawable, and they work with edge and corner treatments to take shape. And this means that we can now theme shape throughout the app, which is pretty cool. So for example, let's say you have something that looks kind of reasonable like this, and you want to change it to something ridiculous like this, where you have cut corners on top and rounded corners at the bottom. And something to note is that you might notice that the cut corner and the text input layout is a little less intense than the cut corner of the button. And that's because different components interpret shape differently. So that's something to be conscious of. It can be confusing if you don't know that. And how do we achieve this in a consistent way throughout your app? There are some new attributes related to shape. And they are shape appearance, small component, medium component, and large component. And small components are things like text input layouts and buttons. Medium component is card views and dialogs, and large component is like nav drawers. And in this case, we only care about small component because we're theming buttons and text input layouts and that level of widgets throughout our app. And then we can define the style that inherits from shape appearance.material components.small component. Make sure it uses the right parent. And then you can say, all right, I want top left and top right to be cut. I want bottom left, bottom right to be rounded. And I want the corner size to be 8dp. So now you have a whole new level of granularity when it comes to shaping components through your app. And you can do them in these three categories. So you can have the same shape throughout components, which is really convenient and quite cool. All right, so this wraps up shape theming. And now we're on our final theming subsystem, which is typography theming. If you open the material design guidelines, you will see something like this. It has around 12 type scales that are defined. And now they exist as theme attributes. So if your designer comes to you and says, I want all the toolbar text in your app to be headline 6, and this is assuming your designer has read the material design guidelines, which hopefully all of our designers have done that, you can now directly use the headline 6 attribute for the toolbar in your app. It's already there. What material design is recommending is there in code. What a concept. And if you want to, let's say, customize this, you can inherit from the headline 6 parent style, maybe set a font using Android::font family, and then set that in this theme so that all the headline 6 text in your app look consistent. So again, with typography theming, we have a lot more control over text in our app as well. So through shape, typography, and color, we have more control and we have more options on how to theme our apps effectively. So I hope you're sold and you're ready to migrate to the material component theme. So your app probably has something like this, where it's theme.appcompat.whatever. And you can change it to theme.materialcomponents.whatever, so you can swap out appcompat with material components. And now your app is inheriting from the material components theme. And that's it. All right, this talk is over. It was just one line of code, and have a good rest of the conference. But this is Android development, and things don't usually work with just changing one line of code. And this is no different. So You won't believe what happened next. Our buttons lost icons, their text shrunk, they changed backgrounds. Our dialog buttons became this ugly mess. In this case, we're actually asking our customers to subscribe to our service and give us money. Nobody's going to give us money with ugly buttons like that. And then the text input layouts throughout the app turned into this ugliness as well, which I believe is the default look of text input layouts now. You can say we had a couple things to fix. And I'm going to show you how we fix some of it, because you might run into it as well. And the first thing to note is that when you migrate to the material component theme, all of your buttons are now inflated as material buttons. And this is only for buttons right now, I believe. And if you were using Android:\background to style the background of your buttons, that does not work anymore. You have to use background tint, which accepts a color stateless drawable or a color. And there is a new default style attribute called material button style. So if you want to apply the style to all the buttons in your app, you can use this. However, it is interesting to note that in a material component world, the color of the button background by default is the color primary. So if you want to just change the background color for some of the views, you have another option. You could use a theme overlay to style that button. But what if you wanted all the buttons in your app to have this non-color primary color? Then there is a third option, which is material theme overlay, that you can set on the default style. And this is a new attribute that was introduced to overcome a current deficiency in the Android styling system. Because right now, you can't set a theme in the default style. You can't do Android:\theme. So you can do app-wide widget-level styling, but you can't do app-wide widget-level theming. So you can't say, I want all the buttons in my app to have color primary green, and I want all the text input layouts in my app to have color primary purple. There's no way to currently do that until now. So let's take a look. The material theme overlay is an attribute that you can set in a style, and you can set it to a good old theme overlay. Here, I'm just overriding the color primary to be this midnight color, so something that's not originally my color primary. And then I can use, again, the material button style, default style attribute to set this throughout my app. So now you can do app-wide widget-level theming, which is pretty cool. All right, so I don't know if you remember, but we lost some icons here. We were able to restore them by using this material components.button.icon style. So no more drawable start, etc. to set icons. You can just set an icon using the icon attribute. And by default, they are tinted by color primary, but we wanted to retain the original color. Like in this case, we wanted to have the Google colors. So we set icon tint as null. And there are a lot more cool attributes like ripple color and more styles like text button styles. So I highly recommend you take a look. There's so many things we were doing by hand earlier, we don't need to anymore. And last but not the least, we were able to fix this ugly text input layout to something more reasonable. And what you see on the left is a filled box style, which is the default. And we were able to change it to an outline box style using the text input style default style attribute. And we set it to the outline box style. And we set the color of selection by default is color primary. So if you want to override this throughout your app, you could use a material theme overlay to do that. So as you can see, we had a few things to change and fix. And depending on your app, maybe you have many, many screens, and maybe your styles are all over the place, or your color palette wasn't set up very well, and this might require, this might be a huge change for you. Or maybe it might go really quickly. It really depends on the current state of your app. So I suggest that you try this and see what happens. And if it's not viable to do it in one go, then you can use something called a bridge theme, which inherits from AppCompat, but the new theme attributes for material components is defined. So when you migrate to a bridge theme, nothing should change visually. But you can start using material components, and you can start opting into material components one by one. So you could set material button style to a material style, and all of the buttons now in your app will have material button styling. But the rest of your app will look exactly the same. So you really don't lose out on anything by migrating to a bridge theme. If you were to use a material component with an AppCompat theme, then your app might crash because material components usually look for some attributes to be defined, some of the new attributes, and if that's not defined, your app will crash. So definitely consider migrating to the bridge theme. If you can't migrate right away, you really don't lose out on much. And again, you change AppCompat to material components, and you append bridge to the end. And I know this is just one line change, but this should work. If it doesn't, let me know. So nothing should visually change, and you can start using the new material components. All right, so I'd like to leave you with some tips for debugging. If something looks funny, you first want to look for the attributes that matter. And you can do this in the documentation. You can try looking at the documentation, but we all know it can be pretty hard to navigate. And the best way is to kind of command click into things. So let's say you're like, OK, where is this blue coming from for this button? See if it's set on the view. If not, see if it's set on a style. If not, look into your Android manifest. See if an activity theme is being set. If not, go into your app theme. Go into the default style and see what's being set. So you kind of have to, unfortunately, just dive in. It'd be cool if we were all robots and we memorize every attribute, but that's just not possible. Figure out what kind of attribute it is. Is it a theme attribute? Is it a style attribute? For example, you can have an attribute that does, you can have an attribute and a theme or a style that style the same thing, right? So get all the attributes, figure out what type they are, figure out the order of precedence. So ask yourself, what could possibly be overriding this? As you saw the view hierarchy, if you set something and it's not working, something could be overriding it above. If you are using a material component theme, try to see if there's a material component style. As you saw, sometimes that fix some stuff. And there are bugs, so it may not be you, it might be them. The Google devs who are working on this are very active on Stack Overflow, GitHub, etc. So feel free to go in there, see what the bugs are, and file them. And these are the useful links. And this wraps up the talk. I hope you will have a less frustrating and more fun time using the Android styling system. My slides are at this link, but I'll also be tweeting it. And feel free to ask me any questions. I have vouchers and stickers, so you can come by and say hi if you want as well. And shout out to Nick Butcher, who helped me with the content, and everyone in the community for blogging and talking about this stuff. It really helps everyone. And yeah, thank you.